As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ crafting podcast. I changed the name of these videos last week because I've kind of decided that I would like to talk about all of the crafts that I do, not just my knitting in these videos, and so it just didn't really seem appropriate to call it a knitting podcast like solely anymore. So we are going to call this a crafting podcast where I talk about everything that I have been crafting over the past week. Although I did take a week off last week, so we are now talking about everything that I have been crafting on over the past 2 weeks. So I hope you've all had a wonderful couple of weeks. I hope you've got lots of crafting done and everything. I have got quite a lot to share this week. I have got 4 finished objects and 3 whips, all of which are new cast-ons. And I only have 1 sewing project, the rest of it is all knitting this week. So yeah, I'm really excited to catch you all up on everything that I have been working on. It was a lovely week, got to spend lots of time with my daughter because she was off school, got to spend some time with my husband as well because he took the week off. It was just a really lovely week, like went on lots of days out, but also spent a lot of time chilling out and like resting at home. So yeah, it's just been really nice to kind of take a step back and just chill out for a week, really. So without further waffle, let's get into my projects. I am going to talk about what I'm wearing, but as it is a finished object, I will talk about it in just a little bit. I won't forget this week because I always forget. But if I do forget to mention anything, everything is always linked down in the description box. If you did want to go and check it out, all of the patterns, yarns, and Ravelry projects and everything are all down there in case you were wondering about any of them. So yes, without further waffle, let's get into it. So my first finished object is something that I haven't actually shown on the podcast because I cast this on and cast it off last week, and also the yarn arrived last week after I had filmed. So I didn't get to show that as an acquisition either. But either way. So I have been slowly filling my TV cabinet with knitted gnomes, and I also picked up a couple of months ago the Gnomes of Grimblewood book from SCHIRA. And I've kind of been working my way through that book, and I've been using gnome kits from Giddy Yarns to make them. So this is my 3rd one now. I saw that Helen came out with some Valentine's Day kits, and so I picked up the romance kit. All of my gnomes are knit on her sparkle base, and this is Gnolan. He is the swirly gnome, I believe. He's one of the taller gnomes in the book. And so in the gnome kits, you get 3 minis. I have a picture of the kit before I wound it up and started working on it, so I will pop that in here. But you got like a light pink, a darker pink, and then this brown. And I got them all on the sparkle base, which is, I think, I don't have the yarn band anymore, but I think it's 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon and 5% stellina. It's something along those lines. But it's got a beautiful like little silver sparkle in there, which I can never get to show up very well on camera, so hopefully it's kind of coming across. And I used, so this is the fingering weight version of Gnolan. All of the gnomes can either be knit up in fingering weight or DK. I chose fingering weight because I didn't want to hold my yarns double, and I was a little bit concerned that I was going to run out of yarn, which now seems a little bit silly because I ended up with quite a lot left over. So these yarns were all themed around Valentine's Day, so I chose to use Gnolan as my Valentine's Day cast on. I don't usually do things like that, to be honest. I had a Christmas Eve cast on, and I thought since the yarn arrived on Valentine's Day and I kind of wanted a little bit of like a palette cleanser in the middle of doing some of my larger projects, I thought I'd just cast on Gnolan as like my Valentine's Day project. And so since the yarn was Valentine's Day themed, it arrived on Valentine's Day, it kind of just seemed fitting. So I decided that I was going to use the pinks as like my main colours, and then the brown just for his nose and beard and his little hands. Which has given me a slightly kind of like lower contrast than I was maybe going to sort of aim for with this stripy gnome, but to be honest, I think it works really well, and he kind of matches like the colours I've used in my other 2 gnomes as well. So he fits in really well on the shelf with my other 2 gnomes. And so I ended up using the darker pink for his body with the lighter pink stripes, and then the lighter pink with darker pink stripes for his hat. And I think he looks super cute. I absolutely love these gnomes. I think they're so much fun. I ended up using 24 grams out of my 240 grams. So I have quite a lot of yarn left over, but I've been saving up all of the yarns that I have left over from my gnomes so that I can then knit more of them out of the book. So I'm very happy to have some yarn left over so that they can all kind of match each other in their colour schemes and everything as well, and sort of look like a little family of gnomes on my TV stand downstairs. So yeah, I really love knitting up these. I think they are so much fun. Gnolan is another one where you like start at the brim of the hat and then you knit the hat using like stockinette and decreases until you get to just using an I-cord for this cute little swirl. I think it's such a little fun addition, and I really like it. I think it's a really cool little top of the hat, and I like how it's mirrored again in his beard as well, which is not showing up all that well, but yeah, he does have a little swirl at the end of his beard. And then once you have finished the hat, you then pick up stitches and knit the body. And I really like how these are all knit in kind of like one piece and you don't have to do a huge amount of sewing up, because that's one thing that I hate about toy knitting, when you have loads of little pieces and you have to sew them all together. And these have like the minimal amount of that. So yeah, you knit all the way down and then you knit the base as well, and you stuff it just before you close it up. And I have once again used just like toy stuffing from sort of like here upwards, and then the bottom is stuffed with dried lentils so that he has a bit of weight to him and he stands up quite nicely. I used a 2.25mm needle for like the main body and hat, and then I used 2.5 for his nose, hat, nose, beard and ears? Arms. But I did accidentally knit the medium-sized arms instead of the large arms. So his arms are a little bit short, but it's fine. It gives him a little bit of character. I don't really mind. I didn't actually notice that I had knit the wrong size until I'd already sewn them on, and I wasn't at the point where I was going to like take them off and then re-knit them or add length, because to be honest, there's already enough ends in there and I just didn't really see the point. And I don't think you would ever really know unless you sat a Gnolan that had the longer arms next to my Gnolan. I don't think you'd really notice. So yeah, I think he was great fun. One modification that I did do, the pattern says to cut the yarns at each sort of contrast stripe on the body. It says that you can carry the yarn up through the hat, but you should cut the yarns each time you do a stripe, because apparently it's going to cause issues in the striping if you carry it down. But I didn't want that many ends, so I just carried mine down, and to be honest, I think it looks perfectly fine. I don't think you'd actually notice that I did that instead of cutting them. So yeah, that was the one slight modification that I added. But yes, this was just a super cute little knit to add to my little collection of gnomes, and I think I might just carry on doing this when I need a little palette cleanser, cast on a gnome, and then hopefully by Christmas we will have a nice little collection of gnomes to decorate our TV stand. Not that they only come out at Christmas, they stay there all year round, but you know what I mean. So I cast him on February the 14th and I cast him off on February the 15th, and so Gnolan took me a grand total of 2 days to knit. And cost wise, so Gnolan is available in the Gnomes of Grimblewood pattern book, and for that book it is £12. And then I picked up the gnome kit from Giddy Yarns for £15 for the 3 minis. So if we add up the book and the mini set, then it comes to a total of £27, but you do get 8 gnomes in that book. So yeah, it's not quite that much, but to be honest, like, the book is kind of worth it if you want to knit more than one gnome. So yeah, a grand total of £27 for this project. And I just think they're so cute. I love gnomes. And I like how they all have their own little character and everything. So finished object number 2 is a pair of socks, and this is the pair of socks that I was knitting up for my husband. They are just a pair of vanilla socks, self-drafted on 64 stitches. I used a 2mm needle for my 2x1 rib, and then I used a 2.25 for the main body of the sock. And I used Cascade Heritage in the colour Moss as my main colour, and then the black stripes are Gusto Wool Echoes in the colour 1511, which was left over from another pair of socks that I knit for my husband last year. And so 2 weeks ago when I last showed these, I had finished up sock 1 and I hadn't yet cast on sock 2, but I did cast that on just after I filmed, and I have now finished it. So now he has a new fresh pair of socks to wear. So I knit on these whilst I was editing last week. No, not last week, 2 weeks ago. So I knit on these whilst I was editing, and then I had them as like my travelling project. I had them in my bag whilst we were going on day trips, and I used them as sort of like just quick pick up, put down knitting. And the second sock knit up so quickly. The foot, I will say, did sort of feel like a little bit of a slog. Because it was kind of that point where you're getting to the end of the project and you're sort of just like, oh, I just want this off the needles now. But they were relatively quick to knit up. So I just knit the second one to match the first. I did 10 rounds for each colour on the leg of the sock, and then I did a standard heel, flap and gusset, and then I gradually made the black stripes smaller, but I kept the green stripes at 10 rounds per stripe. So the black stripes go 10 rounds, 8 rounds, 6 rounds, 4 rounds, 3 rounds, 2 rounds, and then 1 round. And just by luck, that seemed to give me enough rounds to then get to the toe. I didn't plan that at all. It was just luck, and I think it's worked out. And I think it's worked out really, really well, because these look so sort of deliberate. They don't look like I was just running out of yarn, which I was. And so yeah, he's very happy with them, I'm very happy with them, and I'm really looking forward to getting a new pair of socks cast on for him, because he is the most knit-worthy person in the world, and he loves his hand knit socks. He doesn't actually wear commercial socks anymore, he only wears the socks that I knit for him, which is a really, really lovely thing. But yeah, so now he has a new pair of socks. Not really a huge amount to say about them, to be honest. I think I kind of like talked these to death over the past couple of weeks. But yeah, yarns are really soft, and hopefully they hold up pretty well. I've not really had a problem with Cascade Heritage before, and the other socks that he's got in the Gusto wool seem to be holding up okay. So hopefully these last for a good while, but I'm hoping to get him more socks so he can rotate them a little bit more. I'm hoping to get him more socks knit so he can rotate them a little bit more frequently as well. So hopefully they will all last just that little bit longer, because I've had to re-knit a couple of the toes of his socks recently. But, you know, that's fine. Socks get holes in. They're quite heavy. They're like probably the most heavily worn knit, really, aren't they? Because you're standing on them and everything. So, and they're in shoes. So there's a lot of friction there. But yeah, I'm very happy to be able to hand these over to him now. And I cast these on January the 25th, and I cast them off on February the 20th. So these took me a grand total of 26 days to knit, which I'm pretty happy with, to be honest, because his feet, he's got like a men's size 9/10 foot, which is considerably bigger than my feet, and so logically these are going to take longer. So 26 days I don't think is too bad, considering that I was mainly knitting these like when we were out and about, on the go, that kind of thing. And cost wise, a ball of Cascade Heritage is £8.99, and the Gusto Wool Echoes is about £16. And so the grand total, because I didn't use a pattern for these, is about £24.99, but I had already used these yarns previously in other projects, so yeah. I always think that sock yarn, especially when you use hand dyed, it kind of skews the pricing quite a lot, because I never use like a full 100 gram skein in a pair of socks. I always use it in like multiple pairs, but to be honest, that's pretty reasonable, considering the fact that I am now also using the Cascade Heritage in yet another project. So that's doing me 3 projects now. But yeah, that is my husband's first pair of socks of the year, ready to be gifted to him. Okay, and so that brings me to finished object number 3, which is also what I'm wearing, and this is the Irene Slipover by Journey Through Yarn, and I knit this up out of a mystery yarn that I picked up from a yarn shop in Bristol called No Frills Knitting. I ended up ordering this online for really, really cheap, because I don't really know what the fibre was. I think it's definitely got more of a plant base in there than an animal base. It's got very little elasticity, didn't grow really at all in blocking or anything, and yeah, it's not particularly sort of stretchy like a couple of the other garments that I've got that are in plant-based fibres as opposed to animal-based fibres. But that is fine because I kind of knit this up feeling like I wanted to use this vest as both like a sort of spring summer top as well as a layering piece in the autumn winter and the spring, to be honest, because it is never particularly warm here in spring. But yeah, 2 weeks ago I think I was maybe here. I just joined in the round after knitting the front and back panels, and maybe I had done maybe like 2 inches. I can't fully remember. But since then I added on, since then I finished the ball of yarn that I was working with, and I think that got me to about here. And then I added on the neckband and the arm ribbing just to sort of see what that was going to do to the length. And it did bring the length up quite considerably. And so I then kind of measured how much longer I was going to need to get to the top of my jeans. I wanted it to be about 1 centimetre below the top of my jeans, and I think, if I stand up, I think I've managed that. So it's kind of just sitting just below my waistband. So it gives me enough coverage that I'm going to be able to wear this without anything underneath it in the warmer weather, but also I'm going to be able to layer it because most of my tops I end up tucking them into my jeans anyway. And so I think it's worked out as kind of like the perfect length for me. Although I did have to add length compared to what the pattern was suggesting. The pattern suggests for a cropped length to knit it to 22 centimetres from the underarm, and I ended up having to knit mine to 31 centimetres. But I kind of knew that I was going to need to do that because I have quite a long torso. I've got really short legs and a long torso. And so I knew that I was probably going to add more length, which is why I like to add on my neckbands and everything to just see what that's going to do, to make sure I don't have to then rip back and add in more length after I'd already done the ribbing, because I always feel like that's such an annoying thing to have to do. But other than that, I knit this all completely to pattern, and I'm so happy with how this has turned out. I think it's sort of, like I say, the perfect length, and I love how it's got enough positive ease that it sort of fits quite nicely over the top of my tops, over the top of like my t-shirts and everything, but it's not like drowning me in fabric. So I think it is going to be a really versatile piece in my wardrobe, and I'm really looking forward to being able to style this for like warmer weather as well as the cooler weather that we're having. And I like the fact that it's a really easy layering piece as well. I think because this doesn't have a huge amount of positive ease, it's going to be something that I can put on underneath my much bigger jumpers when it is really, really cold in like the depths of winter, to just add a little bit of warmth. But for now, it's really nice to just chuck it on underneath my coat with like a long sleeve underneath, and have it as like another layering piece, A, for style, and B, just for warmth. Because we have had a couple of slightly warmer days recently. Not today though, because it's absolutely hammering it down with rain, but it's been a much nicer, it's been nice to have it as a sort of additional layer. So as for the yarn, it's definitely quite stiff. It's not uncomfortable, but it's definitely much stiffer than like a sort of like 100% wool. It is soft enough to wear next to skin, and like I went out and did some gardening with my daughter yesterday and I was wearing this, and it's not been irritating or anything on my skin, like even when I've gotten warm. So I think it's going to be a really good yarn for when it does warm up a bit, just to wear like without anything underneath it. But it does not have any real like elasticity. But I did go up a needle size when I did the sort of like knit two together bind off for the neckband to fold it down, because it is a double folded neckband. And I'm really happy I did that, because I think if I hadn't, it'd probably be much more uncomfortable to get it over my head. This is perfectly fine to get over my head, but yeah, because it hasn't got the elasticity there, I think it would pull too much and it would be kind of quite painful. But yeah, it doesn't have a huge amount of elasticity in it. But I'm quite happy with it. I'm glad that I chose this yarn for this project. I think it is going to work out really well. I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite hard wearing as well, which is quite nice for sort of more of like an outer layer like this. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this project turned out, and it was such a good, fun knit. Like I say, it was one of those sort of perfect, mindless, and also engaging projects because of the differences in texture and everything. But yeah, I absolutely love this project, and I would definitely recommend it if you are looking for a slipover pattern to knit up in the kind of transition months that we're going into. It's a really, really lovely pattern, really well written. And yeah, like with all of Rebecca's patterns, I would 100% recommend. So I cast this on February the 4th, and I cast it off on February the 22nd. And so it took me a grand total of 18 days to knit. So barely any time at all. And to be honest, it was always going to be that way because it has no sleeves, and it's a cropped garment, but it is such a lovely garment to have. Also, I knit the smallest size, so I had considerably less knitting than the larger sizes, but it's still a really quick, engaging knit, and yeah, I absolutely love it. And cost wise, the pattern cost me £6.50. The yarn I bought a while ago, but I think it roughly cost me about £3 per skein because it was like a mystery yarn. And so I ended up using 314 grams for my slipover with the added length. So that puts me at roughly about £12 for yarn. And then that brings me to a grand total of about £18.50 for this garment, which I think is pretty reasonable. I mean, obviously the costs have come down because I used a mystery yarn, but yeah, I think this was well worth it. And I do still have a fair bit of yarn left over because I bought 5 skeins. So I've got some more of this yarn to kind of make something else with, which I need to kind of have a think about what I would like to make with it, but it probably won't be anything anytime soon. So yeah, that was my Irene Slipover, and I'm so happy with it, and I'm really looking forward to styling it into my wardrobe for the spring. So that brings me to my final finished object, and it is a sewing project, and it was something I whipped up really, really quickly in an afternoon with my daughter. And so for a little bit of background, this year we are starting to renovate the upstairs of our house. So we moved in, and this house kind of desperately needed a bit of TLC, nothing like structural, but everything kind of needed repainting, the walls need a little bit of work, and we've kind of slowly been doing it over the period of time that we've been living here. So we've kind of managed to do downstairs to a point where we're pretty much happy with it. But upstairs still needs doing, and we kind of left that to last because when we moved in, my daughter was very young and she was obviously still napping during the day, so trying to get in and like prep walls and paint them and everything is just not really going to happen when you've got a little baby that needs to sleep. And so yeah, now we're going to start, now that we've all got a little bit more time, now that she's a little bit bigger and she can kind of get involved and everything. But anyway, yeah, now that she can kind of choose what she wants in her room and like the colours and everything that she wants, I decided I was going to make some of the soft furnishings to go in there. And she has quite a lot of cushions and things that she uses to sort of prop herself up when she's looking through her books or like sit on the floor and everything. But they all had like really random pillowcases because they were just cushions that we'd picked up along the way. And so I thought, oh, I'll just make some cushion covers for her rooms that kind of fit in with the colour scheme and everything and are a little bit more her. And I had some pink gingham, which I picked up from Beehive Fabrics in their sale, and I made her a little cushion cover. So I went for one with just this sweet little ruffle around the edge just to make it a little bit more fun. And I essentially just measured out the inside of the cushion and cut my fabric with a 1 centimetre seam allowance on each side, and then I measured, and then I used my measurement from each of those sides to calculate how long I needed the ruffle to be. I basically just took those measurements, added them all together, and then times that by 2 to give me a kind of big enough ruffle. And my ruffles aren't like the neatest, to be honest, but I think they're perfectly functional for a cushion. And then I essentially just sewed the ruffle to one of the squares of fabric that I had, and then sewed that piece to the other square that I had, and then I also added in an invisible zip to the last side so that we can take the cushion cover out, off, sorry, and wash it if we need to and everything. But I think this is so nice. I think it's a really lovely addition to her room. It's definitely much better than the previous ones that just didn't match. And I am going to make a couple more in some different colours in this like 1-inch gingham that I have in my fabric stash, so that she can have some more cute little ruffled pillows in her room that kind of all match and everything and are just a little bit more sort of to her kind of style. But yes, that was a new little project that I whipped up over the past couple of weeks for her. And that brings me to the end of my finished objects for this episode. Now, I do have a fair few whips to talk through, and they are the thing that I am really excited about at the moment, because I've kind of started moving towards more of my like spring knitting, and yeah, I'm just really excited for it. So yeah, let's get into some whips. So first up on my whip pile is a pair of socks, and actually I've nearly finished these. I cast these on not long after I filmed my last episode, and so they've been on my needles for a fair while, and yeah, I've just been really excited about knitting them. So I think I talked about casting these on in my last episode. These are the November Colourwork Cuff Club socks by Summerlee, and I am using my Giddy Yarns week 3 skein from my Grinch themed advent from 2024, which was a weekly sock set advent. But I've swapped the minis around from weeks 3 and weeks 4 just to give me a little bit more contrast. The mini that came with the main skein, which is this blue, was sort of like a turquoise, and I did start knitting these with that as my contrast colour for the Colourwork, and you just couldn't see it. So I took the mini that came from week 4, which is this skein. Oh my goodness, hit myself in the face. Which is this skein, and it came with this pink mini, and so I just swapped them around because it was going to give me much higher contrast. And there is some of this pink in the main skein in these like little speckles, so I think they go together pretty well, to be honest. And yeah, so this was sock 1. I used a 2mm needle as always for my 2x1 rib for the top of my sock, and then I have used a 2mm needle for my Colourwork because my Colourwork gauge is just so loose, especially in socks on really small circumference. So yeah, I used a 2mm needle for my Colourwork, and then I've used a 2.25 for the rest of the sock, and I usually knit up size medium with 64 stitches to fit my feet. So yeah, I've done the heel flap and gusset on sock 1, I finished the foot. I've added in these markers every 10 rounds after I finish the gusset decreases as well, so I can make sure that I just knit both socks to match. And I did add in the optional extra round of Colourwork at the toe as well, which, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know if it was really worth it, because the end of this sock, I mean, this is showing up more on camera than it does in like real life, but the end of this sock is quite variegated with more pinks and purples, so it does kind of just blend in a bit too much. But it's there now, and I'm going to add it on the second sock so that they match as well. It might be that it shows up a little bit more on the second sock, just by way of how the yarn kind of works out with the speckling. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. It's just, I don't know if it was really worth it. So like I said a couple of weeks ago, I am trying to catch up with the Colourwork Cuff Club. I was really good at keeping up with it all the way through, what was it? Did it start in July or did it start in August? No, it started in August. So I did the August, September and October ones all in the month that they were released. And then the November one came out, and I was just sort of like, I wasn't overly enthusiastic about it. But now I have knit it, I really, really like it. I think it's a really lovely Colourwork pattern, and it's so effective. And I think the colours that I've chosen are perfect for, like, to bring it from like November into spring. I think it sort of gives it a little bit more of like a spring look. But I think it's one of those patterns that could be worked for any season. So yeah, it was one of those ones that surprised me. I was mostly knitting it because I just wanted to have all of the Colourwork Cuff Club knit up. But actually it's sort of really grown on me as I have started to make it. And so because of that, I knit the first one pretty quickly, and I am already at the point where I'm just about to start the gusset decreases on sock 2. So yeah, I was just really excited to get going on the colourwork of the second one as soon as I'd finished the first one. And I actually think I might use this chart to knit up a pair for my husband in obviously colours that are going to fit his colour palette a little bit more. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed it, and I think I am going to knit up my first like repeat of the Colourwork Cuff Club socks in this chart. So yeah, I've just got to get going on the gusset decreases and the foot of sock 2, and then I will have a lovely pair of Colourwork socks to wear. And yeah, so these are going to be, now they are just into the stockinette, and I've changed onto my short circular again after doing the heel. I usually knit my heel flaps on magic loop, well, on a longer needle, just because I find it a little bit more comfortable, and then I leave my small circular on the front of the sock so that I can have a little bit more room to work it. So yeah, I'm just going to be using these as like my in my bag knitting for when we're out and about, because it is just going to be essentially knit through the gusset and then knit round and round until I get to the end of the foot, and I can just move my markers over as and when I get to 10 rounds, and soon enough I shall be back at the toe and I'll have a finished pair of socks. So I cast these on February the 12th, and so they have currently been on my needles for 15 days. And yeah, I can't wait to be able to wear them, to be honest. Like with everything that I knit, otherwise I probably wouldn't finish it, to be honest. But yeah, those are my Colourwork Cuff Club socks for, well, the November chart. Oh, actually, before I put them away, I will just show you the yarns that I was using in the skein. So this is the main skein, this lovely blue, and I believe it's called He Got Her a Cup of Water and Sent Her to Bed, I think, something along those lines. And then this is the mini from week 4, which I think is called Cindy Lou Who. No, it's called The Grinch's Small Heart Grew 3 times that day. So yeah, that is the mini from week 4. So yeah, those are my Colourwork Cuff Club socks. And on the same theme, my next whip is another pair of Colourwork socks. I am just on a bit of a Colourwork kick at the moment. I feel like this happens to me most springs. It definitely happened to me last year because I knit quite a lot of Colourwork in the spring last year as well. Like as soon as we get into autumn, all I want to knit is like all of the texture and cables and everything, and then as soon as we get into spring, it's just all about the colourwork. So yeah, I have cast on another pair of Colourwork socks, and these are the Tiptoe Through the Tulips socks by Stone Knits, and I am using a load of leftover yarns, like partial skeins from my stash. So my main colour is the, wow, these are showing up really bright. I mean, they are really bright, but they just look really bright on camera. And there's a needle in these. There we go. So my main colour is the Rico, what is this called? Rico Socks Neon in the green colourway, which I think is colour 3. And then for my contrast colours, my sort of tulips are in this skein from Wiku Yarns, which they don't dye anymore, but I picked this up I think last year as they were just about to stop dyeing, and this is their merino in the colour Homestead. This is not technically a sock yarn, it doesn't have any nylon in it, but I thought because I'm not using it for huge amounts of stitches in one go, and because it's colourwork, so it's going to have the structure from the other yarns, I thought it was going to be okay. But yeah, it's kind of a test run in these socks to see if it's going to be alright for socks, but I still don't think I would knit like a whole sock in this. And then my last colour that I'm using is the same as the green from my husband's socks, and this is the Cascade Heritage in the colour Moss, and I'm using that for like the stalks and leaves on my tulips. And I love these, I think they're so cool. To be honest, I've been eyeing up this pattern for such a long time, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to knit it. And I kind of made a basket of various colourwork sock patterns from Stone Knits on Ravelry, And then I looked at it and I realised that most of those patterns were in her first book, Charming Colourwork Socks. And so I went on Amazon and I looked at how much the book was going to cost me, and it actually worked out that it was going to be more economic for me to get the book than it was for me to buy all the patterns separately. So I picked up her book, Charming Colourwork Socks, and I think I'm just going to knit my way through all of the patterns that I want to knit out of this before I then kind of like purchase any more. But this is filled with so many of my favourites and I cannot wait to get to knit through more of these. But yes, the Tiptoe Through the Tulips socks are obviously on the front page as well, and I've kind of stuck to colours that are fairly similar to this, but I may knit up another pair of these as well in some other colours if I so desire later on. But yes, this is where I have got to. So I am using a 2mm needle to knit the whole of these socks, apart from the heel where I used a 2.25 because it was just in stockinette. And still these are coming out quite big. They're definitely sort of a little bit wider than my Colourwork Cuff Club socks. Okay. Yeah, you can kind of see them sort of poking out from underneath. So they are a little bit wider, but I kind of like that because there are so many floats sat inside these. So it means that I'm not going to kind of get them caught on my toes as I put them on. And it just gives them a little bit more room for the colourwork to sit nice and flat. So yeah, I've got quite a few floats sitting in there. I'll put that one down. So I wanted to give myself a little bit of extra room. So I'm knitting up the size medium, which does give me a fair few stitches more than I usually have for my socks, but they don't have a size that has like 64 stitches, which is what I would usually knit my socks. So I went for the slightly larger size because I would rather have them sit slightly larger and the colourwork sit nice and flat around my leg and my foot than knit the smaller size and then be really tight and then the colourwork kind of distort whilst I'm wearing them. And I also didn't really want to go up a needle size because then I thought they're not really going to be particularly thick and they're going to be quite gapey and I don't want to see the floats behind my colourwork. So yeah, I've gone for a size medium. And if they are too big after I've worn them for a little while, then the next pair of Colourwork socks I will just go down to the next size. I don't really want to have to go down another needle size because I'm already on a 2mm and I feel like I have to go down any lower then it's going to be just uncomfortable to knit, like knitting on toothpicks essentially. But yeah, I am really enjoying these. These have been sort of like my hyper focus over the past couple of days. I just absolutely love them. I'm also really enjoying being able to use the chart from the book and not having to read them off my laptop. I think that's definitely kind of helping my eyes a little bit. Yeah, it's not having to like constantly read it off a screen. And also it's quite nice to just be able to kind of like take the book, have it in my project bag and then just whip it out whenever I need to without having to do a lot of setup to knit these. But yeah, I absolutely love this pattern. I can't wait to be able to wear them. Like I just feel like with all colourwork, they just fly off my needles. And I'm actually really enjoying knitting them two-handed. So I knit all of my colourwork two-handed and I think it's giving my wrists a little bit of a break and it's definitely been a nice change up for my hands. I've not experienced any pain or anything. So yeah, I think I just might continue on my little colourwork sock kick for as long as it's kind of lasting. So these also have a short row heel. I usually do a heel flap and gusset, but I really like Charlotte Stone's short row heel instructions. I first knit them in, I first knit this heel on my pumpkin socks, which was also a pattern by Charlotte Stone. And I think it was like the first like all over colourwork sock that I knit. And I only actually knit the pumpkins down the leg. And I really wish I'd done them all the way down the foot now. And I have tried another short row heel, the one from the Sock Project by Summer Lee, and it gave me so many holes in my heel that I ripped it out and I re-knit that heel using Charlotte Stone's instructions from her Colourwork sock patterns, and I absolutely love it. I never get any holes, it sits really nicely on my foot, it's really comfortable, and I actually reach for this heel pattern instead of doing an afterthought heel now. I prefer this to an afterthought heel. I think it just fits my foot just that little bit better. I like the fact that I can then knit my socks to the length that I want them to be without kind of having to do any guesswork, and then maybe accidentally cutting my knitting where I don't want it to be cut and having to do some like knitting surgery. I just like the peace of mind of having the heel there already and being able to try them on and work out how they're fitting, and the short row heel gives me that option. So yeah, I really like the short row heel pattern essentially. But yeah, I'm going to be working down the foot now. I think I need to do 3 rows of the tulip pattern on the foot like I have in the leg. And then I'm going to sort of try them on and see how much more I need to knit. But the pattern does say that you need to kind of keep going until you've finished your last like full tulip, and then just add in a bit more stockinette. And then you get to do this sort of like checkerboard pattern again before the toe, and then you add in your toe. So yeah, I'm just going to be continuing on down these. I just love how bright they are. They're just so fun and happy. And then I will be casting on sock 2, and hopefully that one goes as quickly as this one is, because I cast this on February the 23rd. So this has currently been on my needles for 4 days, and I didn't work on this at all last night. And so this is kind of like 2 evenings of knitting really. And it just, Colourwork socks just fly for me. I just absolutely love them. And yeah, I just really love a good pair of Colourwork socks. I love how warm they are because my feet are constantly cold. So yes, I'm very much looking forward to getting some more work done on those. So that brings me to my final whip for this episode, and it is a new garment that I have cast on. And I am knitting the Astrid Sweater by PERNILLE LARSEN of Knitting for Olive, and I am knitting this up in Noro Silk Garden Solo in the colour, what is this, colour 33, and it is this stunning like pickle green, and like with most Noro yarns it's got the like flecks of different sort of colours in there, and it is a bit thick and thin, so yeah, it's a bit funny to knit with. It's definitely a new experience of knitting for me. But yeah, I really like it, to be honest. I really love the colour, and I picked this up at the Knitting and Stitching show last year, back in October. And I've kind of been looking for a pattern to knit it up into. I knew I wanted something that was going to be fairly simple to allow the yarn to shine, because I don't think it was really a yarn that I wanted to knit up into anything textured, because it is quite thick and thin. I think any texture would kind of emphasize that a little bit too much in a way that I didn't really want it to. So I knew that I wanted something that was going to be fairly sort of simple so that the yarn could really shine, and show off all the little sort of neps and everything in there. So yeah, I chose the Astrid Sweater, and that was mostly because it is a stockinette sweater, but it does have a little bit of interest in these beautiful curved hems, and I thought that they were going to be a really nice addition for like layering in my wardrobe throughout spring and summer, to have something that was just a little bit more kind of basic but with a twist, essentially. So I am knitting up the first size, the extra small, and I've had to go down quite a few needle sizes. So this is my swatch, and I swatched on the recommended 4.5, and although I like this fabric, it is very drapey. I just don't think it was going to give me any structure, and yeah, I just wanted something that was going to be a little bit more kind of, not dense, but just a little bit more kind of able to hold its own, not so sort of flowy. And so I have gone down to a 3.75 to get gauge to fit the pattern as well. Also, if I knit this on the recommended 4.5s, then it was going to give me like, I think it was close to 40 to 45 centimeters of positive ease, because I wasn't able to go down a needle, to go down a size in the pattern because I'm already on the smallest size. So I didn't really want anything that was going to be that big because I thought it was going to drown me. So yeah, I went down to a 3.75 to get gauge for the pattern so that I could have the kind of recommended, more towards the recommended ease of the pattern. So this is going to give me 30 centimeters of positive ease across the bust. So it's still going to be quite nice and oversized, but not drown me. And this is actually the first project from my spring knitting plans, which I should hopefully have out for you guys fairly soon in video form. So yeah, I have made some progress on this. This is where I am at the moment. And this is a bottom up construction. So you start with the hems, and the hems are actually started flat, and then you join them in the round once you've knit both of the sets of ribbing and the short rows to shape the curved hem. So I think this is the back. It doesn't necessarily state whether you knit the back or the front first, but I think I'm probably going to use this one as my back. And so I have done the 7 centimeters of ribbing, and I did those on a 3.25mm needle. And this rib is ever so slightly different. So you end up doing, it's like a 3x2 rib. So it's 2 knit stitches and 3 purl stitches, which took a little bit of getting used to. I did a lot of accidentally knitting knit 2 purl 2 and then having to tink back and fix it as I went. But eventually I kind of fell into the rhythm of 3x2. But because it's knit flat, obviously you're changing which one you're doing 3 of each time, so it wasn't quite as mindless as a usual like knit 2 purl 2 or knit 1 purl 1. So that took a little bit more concentration than I was like initially thinking it was going to. And it did take me a long time to knit up this 7 centimeters of rib. It's quite a lot of rib to start with. And yeah, especially when I was maybe like here, just a couple of centimeters in, it just felt like it was never gonna end. And I was sort of rethinking my pattern choice and thinking, oh, hang on a minute, did I really want to knit this if it's gonna start with 7 centimeters of rib and I'm gonna have to do that twice flat? But yeah, it kind of, once I got into the rhythm of it, it definitely sort of went much more kind of smoothly and didn't feel like it was taking quite so long. But yeah, I have finished up the 7 centimeters of rib from the bottom, and then I have done the short rows on this first hem. So like I say, you end up doing the rib and then you do the short rows and a couple of decrease rounds as well to shape that curve. So it's going to sit more sort of like that. And then you break the yarn and you have to knit the second one. So I'm at that point now where I'm about to cast on the second one and knit that second hem before I join in the round. But the yarn is an absolute pleasure to work with. I thought it was going to be, because it's a 45% silk, 45% mohair, and then 5%, is it 5% or 10%? 10% wool. I thought it was going to be quite hard on my wrists and a little bit uncomfortable to work with, but actually it's really quite nice to work with. It's definitely a like I can definitely feel the fact that it's got a high silk content, and so it's not quite as sort of stretchy and bouncy as a wool, but it's definitely still more comfortable than a like 100% silk, or it was more comfortable than knitting this. It's got a little bit more bounce to it, but it is quite sheddy. The fibres do tend to kind of float around in the air, and so I do find myself sneezing quite a lot. I was a little bit concerned with the mohair content as well, because I do find that I'm quite sensitive to mohair, but putting this up against my neck, and I've kind of walked around with the swatch like inside the collar of my t-shirt and everything to kind of check if it's going to be okay on my skin, and actually it's absolutely fine. I think the high silk content and also the addition of the wool kind of mellows out those mohair fibres a little bit, but I don't know if this is really something that I'm going to be throwing on in the height of summer, like in a chillier evening or anything. I think I might have to reach more for like my wool garments for that. But I think it'll be nice for spring, especially when we get to that point where you don't need a jacket or a coat, you can just throw on a jumper, because I think this will still be fairly warm because of that high mohair content. But yeah, that is my progress so far on my Astrid sweater. I'm really looking forward to getting this into the round because I want to start reading more this year, and I think once I get into the body and I'm just going round and round on those long rounds of stockinette, I think it's going to be a really nice sort of knitting and reading project, so I might give that a go. Actually, whilst I'm here, if you have any book recommendations, I would love to hear them. I tend to lean more towards like fantasy and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm willing to give any book a try. So yeah, if you've got any book recommendations of anything that you've absolutely loved, then please do let me know, because I would love to try a couple of samples on my Kindle and everything, and really get back into my reading. I feel like I used to read quite a lot, and now over the past couple of years I've just sort of gotten to the point where I maybe like read a sentence of a book in the evening before I go to bed, and then immediately fall asleep, and then end up reading the same sentence multiple times. But yeah, I want to get more into reading like during the day, especially now that my daughter is sort of really progressing in her ability to read. I think it would really help her to kind of see me reading a little bit more, make her more enthusiastic. I mean, she's already really enthusiastic about reading, but I think it would show her that it's not just something that you do at school if I'm reading more at home, sort of when she's up and about, as well. So yeah, throw any book recommendations at me essentially, and I would like to knit and read whilst working on this. But yeah, that is everything that I've been working on this past couple of weeks. Please, as always, do let me know what you are working on. I absolutely love to hear about it. If you are new here and this is the first video that you have seen of mine and you want to stick around, please do consider subscribing. If you've liked this video, please do feel free to give it a like. It definitely helps my videos to get out to more like-minded crafters and everything, and I do really appreciate it. But yeah, if you want to catch up with me between videos, then I will pop my Instagram handle somewhere up here, and you can also find my projects on Ravelry as well. I am trying really hard to keep that updated this year, a little bit more than I have done previously. And yeah, that's about it from me. So I will catch up with you all again next week with some more knitting and sewing and general crafting. Happy making!